Music is a really weird, confusing career field, and many people end up feeling discouraged, stuck in this gigging and teaching hustle, just barely making a living. So if that sounds like you, or if you're just starting out in your career and you want to know what you're getting yourself into, then keep watching, because I want to dispel some stigmas and confront some harsh truths. Musicians are notorious for being financially not savvy, but I really believe that understanding the basic economic waters that we're swimming in can help us learn to work smarter and maintain our enthusiasm in this confusing game of being a professional musician. So let's zoom all the way out and get a bird's eye view of the basic economic situation. You are a human being who has needs, and you're a musician. Your basic needs are food and shelter, things you could potentially produce yourself.
It's called living off the land.
But that's a ton of hard manual labor, and at that point, you're not spending most of your time doing music, so let's not do that. For any good or service that you need, there are people who love doing that thing and are best at providing it. So let's let them do that, and you'll just pay them. That way, you can spend your time doing what you love and are best at, making music, which hopefully you can get others to pay you to do.
I can pay you handsomely.
You want music to be the currency that you use to plug into the system and bring yourself the resources that you need. But that's not an easy nut to crack. So how do you crack it? Well, you live in a society, and in order to extract value from the society, you need to put value in. This means you need to sacrifice a lot of your time to do things that other people need and will pay you to do. There are lots and lots of ways to get paid. One is to work within a system that's already generating economic value. Be a cog in someone else's machine, aka get a job, like teaching music at a school or being in a band on a cruise ship. Another method is to create the economic structure yourself. Come up with an idea for a good or service, create a whole system to provide that service, and then try to implement it in the world. AKA start a business and be an entrepreneur of some kind, like starting your own recording studio or starting your own band.
We are going into business for ourselves!
Starting a business is a huge amount of work and risk, and success is no guarantee. In fact, most businesses fail. But if you're successful, you get to be your own boss and potentially make a whole lot more money than if you worked for somebody else. Working within an already functioning business could be more stable and afford you a healthier work-life balance. But you're less personally connected to the fruits of your own labor, you don't have a whole lot of agency over what you put your energy into, and even if that business is successful, you're not going to be the one getting rich.
You are not in charge.
A big part of gaining clarity over what you want to do and be is fleshing out what style of economic engagement suits you best. And you can only gain that clarity by getting out there and trying things. And as you do, you'll have realizations like, I don't like managing people, or I can't stand working for others, or I just want to clock in, clock out, have a stable income, and go spend time with my family, or I have a burning desire to grind and hustle and get rich by implementing my genius vision into the world. And this kind of clarity is, in a lot of ways, just as important as knowing what thing you actually want to do. As a musician, you're likely to do some things that are working for someone else, some things that are more on the entrepreneurial side, and a lot of things that are kind of both. And lucky for you, there are a huge variety of things that you can do.
The possibilities are endless here.
You can teach, you can perform original music, you can produce other artists, you can score films, you can write jingles,
compose for video games, be a session musician, play weddings, play in churches, be an audio engineer, run events, be an arranger, be a music therapist, be a sound engineer, play orchestras, be an orchestral conductor.
You have quite literally endless choices of things that you can try. Usually musicians who are doing it professionally are juggling multiple things rather than having a single source of income. Personally, the bulk of my income used to be my private lessons business, which consisted of 10 to 15 weekly students, and then supplementing that would be gigs and running events, with random things topping it off like session work and composing jobs. And it's always evolving. Like last year, gigging and teaching kind of swapped, and gigging became the bulk of my income, and I stopped teaching almost entirely. And it looks a little different for every individual. Like some of the little random things I do, like session work, make up the bulk of what other people do. Some people's gigging life looks like playing weddings, and for others it looks like touring with their original band. Some people's teaching life looks like having private students, and for others it looks like being a hired teacher at some kind of school. It's all going to depend on where you live, who you know, and what you randomly stumble into. But the pie chart of most people that I know looks something like this. Several sources of work, each of which constitute a percentage of an overall income. Now, whatever you decide to try your hand at, there's a cold, hard truth that you need to understand. And that's that music, in general, is not a high-paying career field.
Better you find out now.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means that you need to manage your life and your expectations accordingly. But if music is something that literally everybody loves and wants, why wouldn't it be a high-paying field? Who determines what things cost and how much people get paid? Is it the evil billionaires? Well, sometimes, but in most cases it's all of us, because we live in a free market economy. The cost of goods and services are determined by how much people are willing to pay, and the cost of labor is determined by how much people are willing to work for.
Imagine being so dumb that you think economics is
Who the
that
fuck
simple.
does this guy think
People
he
in
is?
power rigging the economy in their favor is the literal opposite of a free market.
Enough of this guy. We need to rise up and seize the means of music production from the evil record executives and venue owners.
I know, there's a whole lot more to it than that, but this is the basic economic landscape at the level of your local music scene. Prices and wages are balanced in a sort of natural equilibrium by the choices of all the individuals in the system. So what does this mean for musicians? Well, playing music is a highly desirable way to make a living, and so many people are trying to do it. The labor pool is much larger than there are available opportunities. In other words, the market is saturated. This drives the value of a musician's labor down. On top of that, it's a non-essential service. People don't need your musical contribution in the same way that they need a doctor when they need a doctor, or a lawyer when they need a lawyer.
We don't need you.
And on top of that, musicians are generally guided by passion rather than economic logic. Musicians aren't out there doing market research, figuring out in what areas there is demand for what musical roles, and then crafting their skill set to meet that demand. They're just doing what they love and hoping that it works out. And because they're doing it largely out of passion, they'll work for less, because it's what they'd be doing anyway. All these factors drive the value of a musician's labor down. And if it seems like I've painted a bleak picture so far, there is a silver lining, and that's that life is hard.
It's the truth.
And what I mean by that is that making it in music is hard, but I don't think it's uniquely hard. I think mostly it's just that life is hard. Every field has its challenges and trade-offs. You could choose a field that pays more and offers more stability, but then you wouldn't be doing what you love. And that would be hard too. You could say fuck it and drop out of the capitalist rat race altogether and live off the land, but that would be really hard. Being a human and meeting your needs is just hard. Also, keep in mind that the stigma of music being hard to make it in has a lot to do with there being no barrier to entry whatsoever. Anybody can learn a few chords, pick up some bar gigs, and then complain about how hard it is to make it in music. And it's at this level of the industry that I suspect that most of the stigma comes from. Which brings me to my number one tip for making it work in music. And that's that you should work very hard to be great at what you do.
It's the only way.
The antidote to the inescapable reality that life is hard is that there's deep meaning to be found in becoming highly skilled in a craft that you love, and then using that skill as your currency with the world. If it's going to be hard anyway, might as well make it beautiful, fulfilling, and worthwhile. But just on a practical level, the better you are, the more options you have. The more your skills will be needed, the more people will call you, the wider variety of things you can do, the more you can charge, and ultimately, the easier time you'll have making a living. Work hard to be great at what you do, make smart, practical decisions such as not living in fucking Idaho, and it'll probably work out. Get out there, try a variety of things, have your finger on the pulse of what's working for you, and follow the green lights. Some things that you do will cause doors to open and calls to come in. That means you're good at what you do, and there's a demand for that thing. But there is something important that I left out. And that's the mental health component to all this. From the uncertainty of a freelance income to the erratic sleep schedule of the gig life, there's all kinds of ways in which a life in music is tough on your mental health, which is why I made this video about my number one tip for maintaining mental stability as an artist. And if that's not what's there, then it means I haven't made that video yet, so just click here to subscribe, and then you'll get notified when I do make that video. Alright, peace out.